Welcome into the I-80 Boys College Football Show. As always, I am your host, Christian, a.k.a. the right-handed Jared Lorenzen. And somewhere, oh, Jesus, I do this all the time, over there is our show of the star. Chris, go ahead.
Hey, Christian, how the hell are you doing, you two-ton piece of shit? Here's the deal. What we start with today, man, let's get into it, man. It feels like it's been a while since we've talked. What do you got for me today, man? I'm ready to jump down your throat here and disagree with you on some things.
In the words of my friend Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. I've got something extra special in store for you right now.
Ooh.
Are you ready for this?
I am. Let's go.
I found a lifetime deal for you here on Life Alert. Apparently, they've saved over 671,155 lives since 2008. Chris, let's look right here. It kind of favors you right there, that guy.
It does. And then I wonder, like, you do more fucking research on this shit than you do about college football. I think you might be a spokesman for these people.
I think just might, man. I might be getting involved with some of these infomercials, if you will, before too long here. But not in all seriousness, let's get this thing started off proper. On today's show, we're going to be breaking down the college football conference realignment. So, it's been just almost a year now since a lot of this stuff broke with, some of these teams moving and the dominoes have started to fall. And frankly, I mean, I know I'll say this, I'm shocked we haven't seen more than what's already gone on. What are your thoughts on it, Chris?
No, I 100% agree. This is big to me. Just as a fan of college football now for almost 30 years. It's going to change the landscape for sure. To me, to just start this thing off, man, it kind of looks like they want to have just two major conferences, right? You got I kind of see it coming down to, like, you got your 16 here, East Coast divided right down the center, and you got your West Coast 16. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what it looks like to me. You can disagree with that if you want, Christian, but I mean, that's kind of where I see it's going. I know there's a lot of money involved on both sides. But it doesn't matter what we say. It's probably going to happen. I'm not the biggest advocate of that, if you will. I kind of miss I won't say smaller conferences, but I do miss where, a lot of the schools, like the old school rivalries, I've told you about this before, and I probably said it on the podcast as well, is that, I come from the Big 12, right? And I miss the rivalries with Colorado, K-State, Missouri, hell, even Iowa State, those teams, Oklahoma going back in the day, and even Texas. So, like, and that, I mean, you could go further back than that, than the Big 8. So I'm not mad that we joined the Big 10. Don't get me wrong. It's just one of those things now where it's like you see teams coming over, and I think you're probably going to touch on the upcoming teams, upcoming teams and where they're moving here shortly. But that's kind of my thoughts on that, man. I'm not a big fan of the big monster power conferences. Kind of reminds me of the NFL or the NBA, where you got your East and your West, or you got your AFC and your NFC or whatever. So, Christian, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, and where do you kind of think this is going?
Yeah, I think that's all great. I think it's exactly like you said. I think it's the rich are getting richer. It sort of seems like there's a lot of rumors coming out, man. There's a lot of rumors coming out about the ACC and different pieces, and everybody's getting ready to go on the move, and there's a lot of reshuffling. It does seem to favor the Big Ten and the SEC, though. I do think that all these moves are kind of going to two major conferences. And man, I hate it. If I can just speak frankly, I don't like it, because there is a side of me that grew up, and it seems like a lot of the traditions of college football, a lot of those old school rivalries that we used to get to see, right? We grew up with and a lot of these are going to start to kind of come back, but you think about it, the Michigans and the Ohio States are going to now, could that be replaced with Ohio State and USC? Or God forbid, UCLA is doing some stuff, Michigan and UCLA, or Nebraska and some of these different teams. To me, I think this all sets up, and it all points towards, just the rich are getting richer, if I could say that. I think the other side of this, and the question that I ask myself is, could this have been avoided? So, for example, let's say that in the mid 2000s, before all the conference realignment kicked off last time with West Virginia, Nebraska, and some of these teams started shuffling all over the place. What if they would have expanded and they would have gone to a playoff format around that point? And then kind of like how in basketball, they make it more of like the March Madness thing. Like, you have you cut down on the schedule, you go to more playoff games, and now all of a sudden the bowl games, you don't go from the bowl games being, the highlight of everything to a 4-team playoff. And now I think because we've had that for more than a decade almost, that kind of cheapens it a little bit, right? It's like, well, we had 4 teams. Like we should have, I think to me, we should have gone to, at least like a 20-team playoff, something crazy like that right out of the gate. And it would have had much more of a meaning to it from that standpoint.
No, and I thought maybe you were going to disagree because, like I said, we haven't really talked about this personally or anything off air, and I kind of thought maybe you disagree with me because I've talked to other people about this, and they like, oh, I love the monster, 2 conference, 16 teams a piece on both sides, essentially, if you will, and I guess I'm not with that, so I 100% agree with you. I guess as a, I think anybody our age or older probably really loves the old school, conferences. And I remember when, like, this is way back in the day when I was a kid, basically when we went from the Big 8 to the Big 12, for example, that pissed people off. You know what I mean? Like we, went from 8 to 12, right? And that was like a big deal for some of the people that, and I'm not like discriminating here, but the people that were older than me, right? And it was like, oh my God, we don't need more teams, and now look at it, right? Jump to the Big 10. Big 10 is, potentially getting USC and UCLA in there. I know there was a big deal about Oregon, Washington. That comes down to basketball, volleyball, and all that, right? The extra revenue, the money. It's just crazy to me. I guess I don't personally care for it. And I'm with you. I wish I said when they came out, you guys remember probably the BCS system, which I never was a fan of. I thought when they, talked about playoff, and I thought, hey, God, they're at least going to make it 8, right? Or make it 16. And they make it freaking 4. And I still just don't care for the 4. We saw what happened last year. If Alabama should have been in, and that's a whole different debate for another day. But no, I'm with you, man. I'm not a big fan of the monster conferences. Like I said, I think it takes a lot away from just the rivalries between schools. You know what I mean? Like the ones that have been the tradition that been around forever. You can create new ones, and I get everything starts somewhere, but it's like, damn, man. Like, like you said, you made up a great point. Does that take away from Ohio State, Michigan? Does that take away from what's another one? Alabama, Georgia, right? Or Alabama, Auburn. That's the bigger one, right? It's been around forever. Does that take away when you guys add in, let's say Clemson joins ship? You know what I mean? From if that ever happens, or you throw in Texas and Oklahoma, holy shit, right? I just don't like where that's necessarily going. And like I said, people are going to disagree with that, and that's great. I'm glad, we all don't have the same opinion on everything, but like, I guess where it's going is it's not something I'm a huge fan of. Still going to love college football just as much as I always have. It's just kind of sucks on that standpoint, kind of where it looks like it's headed here. And like you said, it's the rich are getting richer. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah, I have my thoughts on that. I'll save it for here in just a bit, for sure. With that kind of being said, let's turn it over to Texas and Oklahoma. And, they're going to be jumping ship next year to the SEC. We talked about this earlier. I don't know what I was looking at, but I actually, me and my stats.
Oh, I do.
So Texas and Oklahoma reportedly are going to receive they're receiving $34 million from the Big 12 over the last year is what they did. They're going to jump up to over $60 million when they move to the SEC. So
wow.
That's huge. I mean, that's big numbers there. Like I said, I think for me, that kind of money is going to be pretty prominent to it. Another thing I like about this is depending on how all this shakes out, they're going to have to shuffle this up. I don't see how Texas and Oklahoma, I don't know, are they going to split them off? Does it make more sense to maybe move, like one of the other teams around a little bit? Like, does Alabama get thrown over to, or does Alabama, and Auburn, do they get pushed over to the SEC East? Like, there's so many things that play into this. They can have so many ramifications. But I am glad we're going to start to see some of these rivalry games that we used to see, the Missouri and Texas game, the Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Texas A&M. Those games are going to come back, I think, and I think that'll be a little more interesting for sure. I also wonder, with them moving, are they going to change? And this is not something that's been announced yet. You know how everybody does their big rivalry towards the very end of the season. I mean, Texas and Oklahoma, they play normally somewhat
They
in the
play
middle of it.
They do.
Right?
They've always had that, like actually, it's pretty early in the season, if I'm not mistaken. It's like 5 or 6, week 5 or 6 or somewhere in there.
Yeah. So like I'm just wondering, do they potentially look at moving that back a little bit if they're changing conferences? I mean, I don't know. I mean, there could be a little more at stake if they did that. I mean, I think that would be, imagine a world where 3 years from now, Arch Manning is quarterbacking Texas, and Oklahoma and Texas are the big swinging guys out there, the big swinging dicks out there in the SEC, and they're going at it, for a chance to play in the, the SEC championship game. So I don't know. I think for me, that's kind of an interesting thing that we'll see a little bit here. Chris, what are your thoughts on it?
No, and like I said, I love disagreeing with you, but I can't on this topic. I honestly think that's a good thing for, like, if you bring up these two teams, right? But what they do with them and how does that affect, like you said, Alabama, Auburn, even A&M and Texas and OU. I mean, that was a thing back in the day. It was like, yeah, it's going to be interesting how they do align this and where they shuffle the teams. I don't know how, they break it up on like an East and West base, you know what I mean? But like OU and Texas are so close to each other. I don't know how they're going to do that, dude. Like, yeah, they're going to have to shuffle some shit around, and it's going to be different, I think, for a lot of people at first, if you truly, love rivalry games and all that. But, God, man, it's good and it's bad. You know what I mean? You touched on the good topics. Bad. I still always will in my heart. It's still funny. Like, I still have to tell myself at times that Nebraska's still in the Big Ten, and that's been since 2011. Oh yeah, Texas OU or SEC now. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a lot for me to. I mean, I am slow and as you would say, handicapped, but I mean, it still takes me some time to fucking process that. It's like, holy shit, like it's gonna be different, man. But like I said, it comes down to money. That's probably the most deciding factor in this. And my question to you is, Texas has their own like television shit. They bring that crap over there with them, because that was the reason why. If anybody remembers in 2011, why Nebraska jumped. It was Texas was going to try to run the Big 12.
Yeah,
and that
the Longhorn Network.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
A&M, Nebraska. I think Colorado eventually jumped out of there. They wanted in the Big 10. They didn't want them. They went to the Pac. A lot of drama over that deal. There was a lot of controversy over Texas trying to basically run that whole fucking thing.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I was getting ready to say, we were talking about this. To me, and call me crazy, there's something about the SEC games that I watch. I like the CBS network. It's going to be weird to see Texas playing and Oklahoma playing on like a CBS network.
Agreed.
Going from having Klatt and some of those other guys calling those games to Gary Danielson and some of those guys calling the games. I mean, that to me is just going to be. It's probably not going to, for the first year, it's not going to look or sound right.
No, it's not. It's going to feel weird if you're an SEC guy like yourself, right? Or even me, who's really not. But I watch those games all the time as a fan over here, and it's always Danielson, and I can't think of the other guy off the top of my head. But they always do all the Bama games, all the big LSU games. Yeah, you're going to throw OU in Texas, and you're going to look at that and think it's a bowl game right off the rip, right? Like, I mean, that's just like, well, what the hell is OU playing, Bama for, right? Week 6. So like, no, it's definitely going to be different, man. And it's going to take some time. It took me time personally just to adjust to Nebraska being in the Big Ten, right? Playing Ohio State, playing Michigan State, Wisconsin. Not that they're that far away from us, but just not teams that you normally play, right? We were used to the Kansas, and K-States of the world, Missouri. You pretty much had the schedule dialed in years in advance, kind of knew like, okay, this is kind of how it ends. And it ends with Colorado on Thanksgiving Day, right? That was, you kind of knew who you were going to play, and kind of liked it that way. But like I said, change is what it is. And I think this is the first of many, though. I think there's going to be a lot coming down the pipe here coming up.
Yeah, I think for me growing up, it's Brad Nessler who's the other guy there.
There you go. Yep.
But I mean, you look at it and it's so different. I mean, you look at, having Vern Lundquist call a lot of the games. I remember, they would call the Georgia-Florida game every year.
Right.
That's so awesome. I mean, can we at least agree that I think CBS and the SEC, I like their broadcast. I don't know why. I just like it better than Fox.
Oh, no, 100%. 100%. I can agree with that. Yep.
All right, good. We agree on something today. That might be it, though.
Holy shit. Yeah, yeah. Well, we got a topic later today we are definitely not going to agree on.
Darn right, bro. So let's get into this here, too. So we broke down Texas, Oklahoma. Let's look at USC and UCLA or UCLA if you're from certain parts of the country. They're jumping to the Big Ten in 2024. Again, interesting move here for you. Let's take a look at this. So initial reports, 2024. I mean, that's gonna boast that up. I mean, I don't know what they were making previously, but right now the average Big Ten school is gonna net out about $62.5 million a year, Jesus, which is just insane.
I mean, Big Ten's got a lot of fucking money though. A lot.
Yeah, they definitely do. I mean, this is going to be. See, to me, what makes this so interesting is, again, figuring out. I think, and I could be wrong. I think it'll be interesting to see how they split this up. I almost think, from just an interesting standpoint from this, like I said, I got to think that they go to the Big Ten West, right?
Have to. Yeah. I mean, the way they have, you look at the way it's aligned right now currently, I would assume, unless they're going to try to realign, you know what I mean? Like realign the East and the West after Big Ten came, or Jesus Christ, Nebraska came over to the Big Ten, and, what was it? Rutgers came over later, and some of those other teams, but Maryland, I believe, I would assume they would stick them over there. Here's the big thing. Here's a hot topic. Notre Dame. Everybody wants Notre Dame, right? The big Catholic school, lots of money, have their own fucking TV program. I know the Big Ten, even when Nebraska joined in 11, wanted Notre Dame super bad back then, and I'm assuming they still do. I know they kind of have a half-assed deal with the ACC. Is that right? They play some games there. Some of that has to do with basketball. What's your thoughts on that? Not to take it off this topic, but I know Notre Dame is that big. They bring a lot of money in, a lot of money.
It's the tale as old as time. I mean, Catholics versus convicts. I mean, that was the story of the 80s, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah.
Or the 90s there for a little bit.
90s, 80s, and then 90s. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I would just say, from a brand standpoint, and you just look at it, and if you're thinking, does Notre Dame, would they fit in the ACC or would they fit in the SEC? No, I don't think so. I think if you had to put them into a conference, they're a Midwestern school, if I'm not mistaken.
They are.
So why would you not want to put them into? You'd have to try to put them into the Big Ten, but you got to find a dance partner to go in, or you got to find somebody to go out. I mean. Yeah. I would think with all this, somebody would probably be willing to bow out. It may be Rutgers or somebody like that, right? Northwestern. Yeah. I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying, if they said, "Hey, we'll give you a free pass to jump out to bring in somebody else," I mean, I'd almost think about taking it.
Yeah, I think, and you have to, because like I said, Notre Dame generates a fuck ton of money. They're kind of like America's team in college football, right? Kind of like Dallas is, the Cowboys are in the NFL. Everybody loves Notre Dame. I mean, not me personally at all, but a lot of people that I've met in my lifetime across the landscape, we love Notre Dame, right? And obviously get into religion and all that. But I mean, they do. They generate a lot of fucking money, man. And they've always been wanted over there. The Big Ten has wanted them forever. And you said it exactly. Their fucking play style resembles exactly what would fit right in with the Big Ten, right? A little more smash mouth football, good defense. They've never had terrific athletes on the outside. Don't run that spread. Kind of like the SEC, where it's more high pace. Clemson, same way. You know what I mean? Just kind of, probably not as many athletes, right? I mean, SEC, ACC got a lot of athletes down there, but Big Ten is more slower, more physical style of football, run the ball. Yeah, they would fit great. I've always wanted Notre Dame to be over here, to be honest with you. I mean, we had a rivalry with them a few years back when I was younger. You know, we played them a couple times on the schedule, preseason, or not preseason games, but right away in the first 4 games of the season, you know, and it was a big deal, man. They were really good games. You know, Notre Dame resembled what I thought was a Big Ten team, honestly, when I watched them. I was young then, but I mean, that's a big one. To get back to your topic though, you know, USC, I mean, Christ, what are you doing? Bringing back the old Rose Bowl games? I mean, that's what it was. It was always the Pac-10 winner versus the Big Ten winner, right? Ohio State, USC, you know, so like that brings a lot of clout kind of over UCLA as well. Throw them in there and they're looking a lot better every year, it seems like now. But like, no, having them over here is great. I'm just curious to see kind of what happens. Also, we're not touching on it right now, but like what happens kind of the Pac-12, right? Washington is a pretty prominent team. Oregon is, you know, probably the standout then, right? I mean, after these two leave, I mean, just kind of curious to kind of see how this all fucking plays out. I mean, Christ, I said what, 16 versus 16? Hell, it could be 32 versus 32 by the time it's all said and done in 10 years.
Yeah, and to me that's the scary part of it. It really is. I mean, it's just thinking about, hey, what it was like 10 years ago for where it's at now, to me is just absolutely, you know, it's mind-boggling to think, hey, in 10 years we're going to be like, man, I wish we could go back to right now, right? Like when Texas and Oklahoma jump into the SEC was the biggest thing. But yeah, it's just going to be interesting. I mean, again, there's the traditionalist side of me that just I don't like it. You know, I want to kind of keep that part of it. I think all they had to do with this was do simple little things such as expand the playoffs, more than 4 teams, and just make, you know, when you go and this wasn't something that anybody could have foreseen, but when they went to the playoff, that really minimized the importance of the bowl games.
Absolutely.
This is something that it all ties in together with conference realignment. It's all money driven, and it all seems like this is kind of squeezing everybody into these 2 things. And it's really gonna, I don't think when you look at how this is shaking out, I don't think a 12-team playoff is going to be enough.
No way. No. And that's where I'm at. I mean, does this eventually 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, hypothetically speaking here, does this become like a 32-team playoff? You know what I mean? Like where you just like, but like you said, then that takes, you know, a lot of importance away from the bowl games. And I know those bowl games are super important, right? But you could also implement those bowl games per round, right? Whatever, you know, kind of like what they're doing with the top 4 right now. They kind of rotate those big bowls, the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl right through there. Because there's so much money, as I understood back in the day, even those bowl games make a lot of fucking money, right? I mean, it's a big deal. I don't know where this thing goes, Christian. I don't have an answer for it, but I could just like you said, it's getting to a point anymore where there's going to be a lot more of this coming. I can promise you that. And it's going to get to where it's just this massive, you know, right versus left, if you will, on conferences. And it's like, holy shit. Like you can only play so many games, you know, and it takes away, to me, like you said, and I 100% agree with you on this whole fucking topic, is that you're taking away a lot of like tradition, I guess is the word I would use. And that sucks for me as a fan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what hurts me. It's like, I was really proud when Nebraska won the Big 12 back in the day, right? Even if maybe we didn't make the national title game or make one of the top bowls. Hey, we still won the Big 12 this year. Now it's going to be damn near impossible at some point to even win one. You know what I mean? Only one team can win on each side. Oh, we finished 3rd in the whatever the hell they'll call it at this point. You know what I mean? It's like, well,
right.
So that's where I'm at with it, man. I'll kick it back to you here, but yeah, I'm 100% on board with what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that brings up a great topic, and that is, you know, what's next. I mean, I think you just touched on this. I mean, the big thing is, you know, it seems like this certainly is a cash grab, I could say, for all this stuff. It's just we're squeezing it in. And for me, if you're going to do this, you got to do 2 things in order to kind of make sure that we get this. And, you know, and that is expand the playoffs, which we talked about, but you also have to take away those games, those small school games. You know, I don't want to watch Georgia or Nebraska play the the Central Iowa Community College for parolees. You know what I mean? I don't want to watch that. I want to watch Georgia, Florida. I want to watch Nebraska, Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin, right? I want to watch those games, and I want it to mean something. And there's nothing like game one of the season. You have a top 10, top 5 matchup, and watching that right off the bat. You know what I mean? The fall air is starting to kind of kick in. It's a Saturday. You don't have anywhere else to be the next day. You pop open a couple of drinks, probably have a little more than you should. Hey, that's okay. Because again, you don't have anywhere else to be the next day, and you watch a great football game. We've kind of been robbed of that in the past. You get all these tune-up games, and I think if you expand the playoffs, there's a lot more leeway there. You shrink the schedule down, so you go from playing 12 games to 10. You do away with those 2 kind of bullshit throwaway games, and you just make it a straight up, go conference.
Yeah,
play an 8 conference. Yeah.
No, 100% agree with you on that too, and that's what I've been saying for years. Get rid of the PUD games you play. I could care less. If you want a couple warm-up games, play a Florida Atlantic or somebody like that, I don't care. But like the 4 usually suck, especially recently for Nebraska as a Nebraska fan, right? We haven't really played anybody. We got Colorado this year, right? And that'll be a big one, right? And that's great. But some of the other teams like Georgia Southern last year, which is hilarious because they beat us, right? We paid them $1 million to come down here and whoop our ass. But I'm speaking for Nebraska right now. But it's just one of those things where it's like, just shrink the fucking thing, make the playoff bigger. I've been saying that for years. More people are going to tune into that. More people want to watch, even if I'm, obviously as a Nebraska fan, we wouldn't qualify for a playoff in the last how many years, right? But I'm going to, as a fan of football, I'm going to fucking tune in to go watch more of those playoff games. I think they would probably get more of an audience by doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of those bowl games, Christian, let's be honest. I mean, for fuck's sake, the Idaho Potato Bowl or the Slim Jim Bowl. I mean, nobody gives a shit about that stuff. I mean, if you're watching 2 6-5 teams play, and I'm not hating on anybody that has a 6-5 team because Nebraska didn't even make that. Nobody wants to watch that shit. You know what I mean? Like more people are going to tune in to watch. Hey, I'm going to watch seed 8 play seed 13 today in a game. You know what I mean? Well, at least it's a top 32 matchup, right?
Yeah,
I'll watch that game.
Exactly. Absolutely. Now you put a different spin on that. Texas, number 8 Texas and number 10 USC. Malachi Nelson and Arch Manning are going to go at it in the Idaho playoff. Idaho famous Potato Bowl, right? But it's a playoff game with that bowl backing behind it. That means so much more. I mean, and let's be honest. I mean, all the bowls is just sponsorships plastered all over the place. I mean, whenever you've got the Duke Mayo PS5 Cotton Bowl of the Year game on, I mean, let's be honest. They get longer and longer each year.
Oh my God, do they ever?
Yeah. But with that being said, I mean, who do you think's next? To sort of jump ship and where these dominoes fall?
I think I see that. So you touched on it just very briefly earlier. I think Clemson and Florida State. Does the ACC still stand on their own? I don't think so. I think they eventually gravitate if we think this is going where we think it's going to go to the SEC, right? I think you're gonna get those. And I think Clemson has a lot of clout. They've been very relevant the last 10 years. Them, Florida State, trying to think who else kind of out of that conference. But I mean, those have been kind of the 2 prominent big names. Florida State's supposed to be really good this year. That's my big one. I can't really think, I did touch, I guess I said on the Pac-12. Oregon, a lot of clout. Basketball, Washington brings a lot of clout, especially in basketball. They're halfway relevant, especially like volleyball over there is huge. So, they also look into those, sports too, not just football. So like, I could see those ones being the more big names kind of, what are they going to do? You see some of these schools that are moving into some of those conferences potentially. It's like, holy shit. Like, they're obviously looking to jump at some point here. And I think eventually, like I said, overall, it's kind of become this like 32 versus 32 thing, East versus fucking West, and call it good.
Yeah. And I think for me, I think it's Washington and Oregon. I think they're a package deal. They recognize their brand. Right. They know how good they are. I'm up in the air about this. I don't know. I could really go either way on it. I think there's a lot of cases to be made. There's a lot of rumors. Hey, they could jump to the Big 12, right? That I've heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard, the Big Ten's still up in the air. To me, and again, it's not going to happen. You got to, if you're going to start bringing in some of these teams, at least jettison some of the other ones. Like, let's be honest. Does Rutgers or Maryland, do they necessarily fit into the Big Ten? Would you trade Rutgers or Maryland for Oregon and Washington? I certainly would.
Yeah. Yeah. If you talk about football, problem is though, like some of those schools like Maryland usually has a solid basketball program, right? Rutgers, they had a solid basketball year this year, like I don't know how much stock they put in all of that, but I do know it's a part of the factor, but this is a college football show. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And no knock on Rutgers, and no knock on fucking Maryland as football programs, but yeah, you would take Oregon in a heartbeat, dude. They generate a shit ton up there. I mean, Christ, look at their goddamn brand up there. Nike's right in their back pocket. Like, they bring a ton of money. Washington as well. They're another school, and they're good against. They're pretty good against. With all fronts of sports. So, yeah, I would do that, and I'm with you. I just don't know if I don't know how. Like I said, I don't know. What's your thought? I guess the flip gears. What's your thoughts on Clemson, Florida State, some of those ACC schools?
I like it from a geographical standpoint. It makes sense. I mean, Florida State's on the rise. Clemson's kind of, they had a down year, but you look at how they've done over the last couple of years, like the last decade. I mean, Dabo's had them right. I think to me, you could sort of run into Texas A&M. You know what I mean? You look at Texas A&M, like for example, when they jumped over to the SEC, and they had, God, what's his name? Lord.
Manziel?
No, yeah, it was Johnny Manziel, but I'm trying to think of the coach. It was Kevin.
Before
Kevin.
Jimbo. Oh my God. I know who you're talking about. Yeah. That's going to kill me.
It starts with an S. It's Kevin Sumlin.
Yep.
I kept wanting to say Summerall, but I knew that wasn't right. I was like, no, that's
Kevin
definitely not
Sumlin,
it. This is Kevin Sumlin over there, Texas A&M, and you thought, oh man, that guy's a great coach. Now I think Dabo's the better coach, obviously.
Right.
But you look at what Mike Norvell to this point of his career has done versus Kevin Sumlin, and I think it's not even a question, who the better coach was there. To me, the reason why I'm kind of comparing those two is they jump over to the SEC. They've had some, they've had some okay years there. You go out and you get Jimbo, you pay him all that money.
Yeah.
And, it's just one of those things where you don't really know. You don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, honestly, I think for me, could I see it happening? Yeah. And that would definitely signal the end for the ACC, I think.
Yeah.
Because those are the two biggest brands in your conference. I mean, same way that USC and UCLA are.
What about Miami?
I mean, yeah, to me,
they were old school Big East when I was a kid. If you don't remember that, remember the old Big East?
Yeah, I remember the old Big East.
They were over there with Boston College and Jesus Christ, Pitt and some of those schools. West Virginia.
Yeah, West Virginia was over there too. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
wasn't Rutgers was in that for a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah,
Syracuse, all those schools. Yep.
I could see Miami jumping over too.
Not to interrupt you, but I mean, they generate enough money, don't they? I mean, it's Miami. Man, Miami seems to be a pretty popular school. I mean, even their basketball programs, they're not always great, but they're always relevant for the most part. Like, I would think that they'd be one of those two that you want if you were the SEC, for example, if we think they come over, right, with the rest of the group. I mean, you say Miami, everybody knows the U, right? Everybody knows the U. So
you brought up a really great point that I just thought of now, and that is, you bring up a good point, and this made me think of this. Imagine this. 2 years from now, Miami, Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina jump over to the SEC. Think about that. You've got three of the biggest schools in the Carolinas. You've got South Carolina, you've got North Carolina, and Clemson. You've got that. You can keep those rivalries intact. You've got Florida, Florida State, and Miami back in there. And to me, you can start kind of having these more interesting dynamics with it, right? To me, for the only reason this has to work, though, is these have to be top tier schools. I mean, I don't want to see, Mike Norvell come out and shit the bed this year, and then 2 years from now they regress significantly, and then Florida State ends up being all right. You know what I mean? An all right ACC school that gets kind of drug into the SEC. Same thing with Miami, right? I don't want to see Mario Cristobal go out and not be able to manage talent. I'm not saying he hasn't. I mean, I think he's going to be just fine down there at Miami. But at a certain point, like with Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, to bring him up again, I mean, he had the #1 recruiting class last year. He's put together some excellent recruiting classes, and they gotta start beating Bama, and they've also got to do a lot better than what they did last year too.
No, well, he's eventually, I hate to say this, I mean, this is a different topic for another day, but he could be potentially on a hot seat at some point. That guy has had great recruiting classes. They haven't gotten much out of that. I mean, you know what I mean? Like for what people are expecting. A&M's got a lot of money. Paid him a lot of money. Won a national title at Florida State, if I'm not mistaken, right? With Jameis Winston and those boys down there. He knows how to win. But what he's done at A&M since he's been there, I mean, the recruiting classes, yeah, that's awesome. That's great. But I haven't seen enough, man. Not enough yet. For where the SEC to me is not up. I don't want to say it's up for grabs, but Bama's on a slide, right? LSU has been down since the Joe Burrow days. Georgia's still the fucking team. I get that. But I kind of thought A&M would be moving this way. I really don't see that right now.
Yeah, and it's still young yet. They got to get the quarterback position figured out. I mean, they're really, we talked about this today. We were talking about a little bit of NFL free agency with one another. And one of the things that I kind of said is, you kind of had asked me, I'll just kind of touch on this lightly, but you'd kind of asked me, why did the Falcons bow out so early on Lamar Jackson?
Mm-hmm.
And I just think when you look at it, one of the things that I heard was they weren't just a quarterback away from competing. I mean, they really needed so many other pieces that what they were going to have to pay him really wouldn't make sense. But I think if you take that same illustration and you put it towards college football, and you're like we're talking about Texas A&M, if you put a top level, and it's not for lack of talent, but you put a kid that's got some experience at this level, in a major conference, be just all right, maybe a little bit, a top 3 or 4 quarterback in any of the major conferences, and you put them on that roster, I got a feeling, man, they could be competing for the Big Ten West.
And I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, my topic was more on Jimbo Fisher. I mean, this guy I hold a lot of credibility towards because he's getting paid a lot. He's a high name, right? I mean, He doesn't like Saban. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to see more. You know what I mean? As a fan, and I'm not a fan of A&M, but just as a college football fan, like, come on, where are you guys going to get? You're not in the same class yet. You know what I mean? Last year I thought was a year where they could have potentially competed for that fucking thing, and they just, man, the games I watched, they wasn't very impressive.
Yeah, and I think to speak, so if you're talking about Jimbo Fisher, I think this is the make or break year for him. I mean, we'll do this on another hot take segment, and we'll probably dig more into this. But I mean, hot take, it's one of those situations where if Jimbo doesn't win this year, he's going to be out. I mean, again, we talk about this all the time. It's not a pedestrian take, but it's if he doesn't have a winning season this year, and if it's not like to what Texas A&M is expecting, they're going to be super pissed. They spent a lot of money on that recruiting trail, and they're definitely going to want to see some return on investment. Otherwise, why are we paying you all this money to coach?
Absolutely. 100% agree. I think we can end it there on that guy. But yeah, that's a good take for another day, though.
All righty. So let's jump into this right here. And that is what should happen next as far as the conference realignment. I know we've kind of talked about this a little bit, kind of leading up to it. And, we've talked about, okay, if you're going to do the conference realignment, in my opinion, you should do a couple of things, right? And that is, expand the playoffs, get rid of some of the weaker schedules, kind of make sure that we cut down on the games a little bit. We make these games mean more. So that way we're kind of everybody's got to win in this, right? Another thing I've said is, again, is the traditionalist side of me. I'd like to see some of these mid-tier schools, as I like to call them, schools that have been great in the past that aren't really in any immediate danger of competing for anything significant. I'd like to see them possibly I'd like to see them kind of go elsewhere and see if they couldn't do something in another conference. Yes, they would probably take a pay cut. However, think about how much money they could provide and how much that would all translate if they could go and start competing and have a big push. I've said this on a previous podcast. I'll bring it back up to you. I know your thoughts, but tell me right now, wouldn't it be awesome to see Colorado, Texas A&M, Missouri, and Nebraska jump back to the Big 12?
No, and no, you're not wrong about that in your thoughts on it. I'm not disagreeing with that. Would it be great? Yes. Do I think it'll ever happen? No. I think there's just so much money, Christian, invested up front, years to come, to make this thing this big, East versus West, 2 power conferences. Would I love to see that? Yeah, I would. I just personally don't think it's going to happen. Topics you bring up, there'd be more money to go around. You're not wrong. The greatest thing, if you had a bigger fucking playoff, some of those teams get a shot, right? Once you're in a playoff, everybody's record's 0-0, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that before. I could bring up the Boise State back in the days. I could bring up a Utah team with Urban Meyer way back in the day. They just Scott Frost's Central Florida team beat Auburn that year. They went undefeated. They beat an SEC school. Auburn was no joke that year. If you get in, you got a shot, right? Now I'm just talking about that. I'm with you. I just don't see it happening from what I've seen my past 30 years of watching college football pretty closely. Man, it's just like where they're headed now, they're eventually, I think, going to get to, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't necessarily disagree with you on it. I think, I think in this world, everything's going to going forward. I don't think we're going to go backwards. I certainly don't think we're going to see a lot of the tradition. I mean, and if we do, we're probably 40 years away from seeing it, or 20 years, or whatever have you. The interesting side of it is, to me, you look at who owns the Big Ten and who runs the, who's the network that does everything with the Big Ten, and who's the network that does everything with the Pac-12 and the Big 12. And that's all Fox, right? If I'm not mistaken. I mean, Fox does all that. Again, 2 of the teams we mentioned are already part of that. I understand there's 2 different conferences. What would the difference, and this is my question on it, would be, I wonder what the difference would be if you brought all those teams in there. How much revenue could that drive up the valuation of, like, the Big 12, for example? Could it be a little more enticing in that way, right? I mean, Fox is a major network.
Oh.
Right. And I'm not saying that, hey, they're going to touch anywhere near $1 billion. But I mean, in the world of college football, I mean, I'm not trying to minimize this, but imagine they say, hey, we've restructured a deal. You move back to the Big 12. You're going to make about $10 million less than what you're making now, in the SEC or in the whatever have you, a year. But if you compete at a national stage and you make it to the playoffs, the revenue you'll earn from that, it's really only like a $5 million difference. That's the way I guess I look at it. I don't know if and I could be very far off on those numbers. I'm just saying, we always talk about, well, these teams are leaving, so this is the difference there. Well, what would be the difference if they jump back and you got a 4-team, blockbuster deal of some of these old prominent teams that could be relevant?
No, and like I said, man, I can't disagree with your thought process on it. I just don't see it happening, though. I mean, I know you're thinking outside the box, right? I mean, but it just seems like this college football has become, and it pisses me off, NIL, and we can touch on that some other day, but it's all about money. Everything is almost like the NFL free agency, and it's basically like a fucking salary cap in a way. It's just like everything is about money. We get more teams, right? We get, these, like you said, Fox is a massive network, massive. They got all the money in the fucking world, man. And those teams, yeah, would I love to see A&M, Texas, Colorado all jump back into a Big 12 conference again? Absolutely. But then I also look at, are they going to take less money, though? Probably not. That's just kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, here's the reality of the situation, though. And this last thing I say about it, I swear, whether they realize it or not, the people that make these decisions, and we do talk about the people that make these decisions at the college level that could ultimately pull the strings for this to happen, their jobs depend on this.
100%.
I mean, athletic directors, presidents, everything, not really presidents, but athletic directors and anything related into that, you can't be irrelevant, forever. I mean, think about what's his name? Jesus, I'm drawing a blank. It's not Trev Alberts. Who's Nebraska's athletic director again?
Albers, Trev. Yep.
Yeah, Trev Alberts. Huh.
Yep.
Oh, I
He's
guess
our
stop
AD.
second.
We had Bill Moose before, and then he took over last year. Yep.
I got to stop second guessing myself. Yeah, but you think about Trev Albers, right? And I was thinking about Marv Albers. That's the one that kept throwing me off, the old
Jesus
NBA
Christ.
guy. Yeah, that's why I was like, that doesn't sound right.
Christ almighty.
But you think about, getting Trev Albers. I mean, and I know, hey, probably the next guy to go is not, if things don't work, it's not going to be Matt Rule.
No.
Right?
No.
It's probably going to be him. So,
yep.
Yeah, and I think it's all tied in. So, is there any final thoughts you have on what you'd like to see happen next with conference realignment?
No, I just like I said, I'm a realist, dude. I just see where it's going and where it's continually heading every year. I'm happy about the big team playoff, right? I'm fine with having 16 teams, 12 teams here in a couple of years, but I see that going to have to get bigger once they have these two massive conferences. People can disagree with me, but I just truly see this is where it's going. These two big ass fucking conferences. I just don't see that any other way around it right now. Right. I mean, I just don't. There's just so much money involved, and the NCAA is not the smartest fucking group of people. Everybody wants money. These schools are taking the money at the end of the day. That's my final thoughts on that, man. As much as I don't like it personally, it is what it is, man. Nebraska, that's all I can say for the Skurs, man. Just keep winning fucking football games, I hope. That's all I can say as a fan.
Well, definitely you're going to be wrong, and I don't even want to tell you what we'll have to do when you are. So we'll have to make a bet on it one of these days.
This guy again, man.
Well, go ahead.
No. I'll tell you what, man. We'll save that for another day. Don't worry.
Yeah. We'll save it, by God. I mean, I don't know if you'll be alive in 10 years, let alone now. So why don't you make this?
Well, once I make it to heaven, so I'm looking down on you because I've always been above you. That's for damn sure. So.
Damn right, bro.
Yeah.
So let's look at this. So last thing here, we like to do a lot of hot takes on the show. This is one we've been kind of thinking about. Now, normally when we throw these hot takes out there, there's a little bit of people don't sometimes understand what we're trying to do with this, and that is, again,
explain it to them.
It is not what we think is going to happen. It is just simply we look around the internet, we say, hey, okay, yeah, that's a hot take, right? Like Billy Napier of Florida, Tennessee and TCU not being, finishing the season, ranked next year. These are all hot takes that we find. Here's the reality of it. Here's the hot take for this week. Luke Fickell could be leveraging the job at Wisconsin to get over to Ohio State. He's getting a little bit closer to his alma mater. He's getting a little bit closer to a place I think he's coached at. I mean, and so here's the reality of it. And this is what makes me say this. This was after they lost to Michigan last year. Ohio State fans, they're calling on Luke Fickell to coach football team. I mean, this isn't me. This is Fox 19. I think this is out there, a local paper.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to jump in right here, Christian. I've been dick riding Luke Fickell for a while, right? I mean, I like the guy. I think he's a damn good coach. I could bring up some stats and stuff like that, but played at Ohio State, coached there forever, either as a defensive guy. I believe he played nose guard there back in the day, if I'm not mistaken. Actually was drafted or undrafted and then went to the Saints, if I'm not mistaken, as a nose guard, even way back in the day, like back in the 90s. But he's an Ohio State guy. There's no doubt. He spent a shit ton of time there. I believe he was the intern. He took over for What's His Bucket in 2011 as the head coach. Did a great job there. I thought that they were going to take him as the head coach, and they didn't. He went on to the Cincinnati is where he last was, and man, you saw what he did with that program, man. Put out some NFL guys, Desmond Ridder, Sauce Gardner, man. Some of those guys out in the NFL right now, they're young guys right now, but I mean, he put out some talent, man. He did a good job of turning that program around. Not that Cincinnati was complete trash when he got there, but done a damn good job, man. And I'm gonna say this on air right now, is that he was a guy that he was the number one guy I wanted for Nebraska, over Matt Rule even. And I thought Wisconsin landed a stud here. I thought that was a big plus for them this year. I believe his winning percentage is like 71 or 72% as a coach. The guy can win some football games. Now people are going to say, oh, he was at Cincinnati. Okay. I mean, I guess that doesn't really mean much to me. The guy still wins games, puts out NFL prospects. He can recruit. He's got guys that can play. That's pretty much where I'm at with this guy, man. I to answer your question here, is he leveraging the Wisconsin job to get the Ohio State job? I think he is. I think he's kind of, I don't know the guy personally or anything, but I just think that give him some time there at Wisconsin, turn that program around a little bit. Wisconsin's been down a little bit compared to what they usually are. I think he's going to have a lot of success there. And I don't know about Ryan Day, bro. I like Ryan Day. Ton of talent. So Ohio State, they get a lot of talent too. But you know my thing about Ryan Day, though, Christian. I always say it, and I think you brought it up too. It reminds me a little bit like a Riley going on, That's where I think if he takes Wisconsin, like you explained the hot take, this is just a hot fucking take. I could see him, if he's really successful at Wisconsin, which I do think is going to happen, does that put pressure on Ryan Day and Ohio State if they're not getting to where they want to get to, which ultimately is a national championship every year at Ohio State? Beat Michigan, win a national title. That is their goals every fucking year. That has to be. I mean, they're not putting, let's go 8-4 or 9-3 on the board. You know what I mean? They got way too much talent over there. Give it a couple years, see what happens. I could see this working out for Luke Fickell. He is an Ohio State guy. I know he loves the fucking program a ton. Spent a lot of time there. I want to hear your fucking thoughts on this because you hate the fact that I just love Luke Fickell.
I don't hate it. I get it. I mean, he's to me, if you want to make analogies here, you've taken one of the analogies I've said here, and that is comparing Ryan Day to Lincoln Riley. I'll make another comparison for you. You think about this. Luke Fickell is like the second coming of Urban Meyer without the alleged controversies. You think about what Urban Meyer did at Utah, then he leveraged that over at Florida, then he went from Florida to Ohio State. And I mean, the guy's won everywhere he's been. So you think about Luke Fickell, everywhere he's been, he's won. I mean, he got Cincinnati to the playoffs. He had Cincinnati a couple of years back taking Georgia to the ropes in the Peach Bowl. I mean, there's some things that Luke Fickell does as a coach with teams that he has no business getting them to that spot. And he does a really great job with the talent he has. Now, with that being said, I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I think it's really interesting that you look at a lot of these guys that are coming into the Big Ten that have, previously, Matt Rule over at Nebraska played at Penn State. He was a diehard Penn State guy. Luke Fickell played at Ohio State, diehard Ohio State guy. I think this is all setting up to, if Ryan Day, I think really you could make the argument if you start to see over there, Wisconsin arguably is in it this year and can get to a Big Ten championship game, or they can pull off an upset this year of somebody that they shouldn't, and they still are in the thick of it. Man, there's some potential. There's some potential over there, especially if old Ryan Day, he doesn't win against Michigan, or they get kicked in the opening round of the playoffs, or they don't even make it to the playoffs this year. Right. And I know we've had our bets on that. We've kind of set our thing on it. We've got it. I've gotten it written down right here. Right. One truffle shuffle beer chug, shirtless, is on this. Okay. So, we're going to have to kind of keep that in mind with the Ohio State Michigan game. But as far as this is concerned, yeah, I think this could happen. Do I think it's going to happen next year? No, I think that's too soon. I think he'll probably be at Wisconsin. For me, if he's at Wisconsin past about 3 or 4 years, that would surprise me.
Right. I got a question for you there. So do you think, let's hypothetically speak here because it's a hot take, right? We can just kind of throw shit out there.
Sure.
Let's say that he wins a Big Ten title year 3. Not Luke Fickell, Ryan Day loses to Michigan the next 3 years. Makes the playoffs, but loses in the first round, whatever, just like what happened this year. Is that would you say, hey, this is the time where Ohio State's, you know what, fuck it. We're going to, if that would happen, would you think that would be enough time? 3 years, Luke Fickell looks way better as a coach than Ryan Day does?
I think
not enough time, though.
Well, and here's the thing. I don't see Ohio State losing to Michigan what would that be? 5 years in a row?
You can flip flop that though. They beat the fuck out of Jim Harbaugh for years, and I think he's a great coach.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I mean,
and
I'm not
I
saying
know
that's going to happen, but I mean, if it did, or let's say that he wins 1 out of the 3, I don't think that's still enough.
And that's all I was trying to say is, look, could it happen to where, he flip flops, he wins 1 this year, loses 1, loses 2, whatever have you, gets them into the playoffs. To me, it's national championship or bust. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to for, I think, most Ohio State fans. They are sick and tired of having to say that the last time they won a national championship was, I mean, it's almost a decade ago, right? I mean, that was the team that had
Cardell
Zeke.
Jones, was it not? At quarterback?
Yeah, Zeke was on the team. Yeah, I mean, Cardell Jones, JT Barrett. I think that was the year Cardell Jones stepped in.
Yep.
Right at the end there.
The other guy, on that team. Yep. No, but
right.
I mean, think about Ohio State though, man. How many fucking times have they been in the conversation last time? I mean, they're always a team that is, I mean, Jesus Christ, when they had Justin Fields, who I love to death, like I know you got some bitter feelings about that guy, but we'll get into that a different day. But you know what I mean? Like they've been super relevant. They just haven't been able to get like to the top. And let's be honest, Christian, I'll say it again. We said it on a previous podcast. They should have beat Georgia last year in that fucking playoff. Don't even fucking, I know shoulda, coulda, woulda. But if it wasn't for fucking piss poor coaching on Ryan Day's part and some kicker that looked like he hadn't kicked a football ever, you guys don't win a national title.
Can you really blame that on old Day though? I mean, I agree with you. Like, look,
did you see the clock management at the end of the game, dude? It was fucking terrible. The plays they were calling, come on.
But I mean, at some point, if you're Ryan Day, you have to figure defense out in big games. Hey, in big games, you gotta figure it out, and that's the whole point of it. Yeah, and you look at Luke Fickell. I mean, granted, when Cincinnati made it to the playoffs, I mean, they just got overwhelmed on offense. But I thought, let me look this up real quick because now you've got me.
2021. Right?
Yeah. I want to see something because I think if I remember right, Alabama only beat them 27-6.
Yeah.
If they, I mean, think about it. Georgia beat TCU, and I know you're going to be like, whatever, by like huge margin. And I think if you look at it, would you say TCU is a better football program than Cincinnati?
No, actually, I wouldn't. No. And I know I threw you for a loop there. I don't. Or I guess, okay, whoa. Currently, yeah. Do I think 2 years ago? No, I thought Cincinnati was – that team was loaded, bro. Yeah, Desmond Ridder was a damn good quarterback, man.
Okay, I'm just saying –
he plays for your fucking Falcons.
I know he does. Do I think – I know he does. I think he's going to be good, but here's what I'm saying. It would have been – to me, that would have been a more interesting matchup – for a playoff game, 100%. TCU, Desmond Ridder, and Max Duggan, battling it out. But my main point with it is, okay, let's say if you just concede this and you say, okay, they were on the same par there.
No, they're right in the same ballpark.
They held Bama to under 30 points. I mean, they just, again, you look at what Luke Fickell does. He's going to get the most out of that talent. I think he's going to get Wisconsin turned back around. And I think he's going to make life really difficult for those boosters and the people making the decisions over at Ohio State. Again, you got to, and I will say this, Ohio State, they're going to have to figure out quarterback play, man. They've had some sure-handed quarterbacks back there. And for the first time under Ryan Day, they're going to have a legit quarterback controversy on their hands.
I agree.
This is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, seriously, dude, if they can't get quarterback play figured out, Wisconsin somehow ends up being the second best team in the Big Ten this year by record and just what you see on the field. I don't know, man. If Ohio State has a train wreck of a season, this could happen sooner than you think.
Nope. I'm not even going to disagree with you on that. I mean, again, we said this was a hot take. I could see it happening though. It's definitely in the realm of possibilities. You know what I mean? And it's a very good possibility in my opinion. If Ohio State, like you said, and I'm a big advocate for quarterback play, right? Bringing back a quarterback every year, or at least knowing who the fuck your starter is going to be. They do. They have an all-out fucking, I think it's a coin flip, whoever wins that thing. Say the guy looks good for 2 games, looks like shit, and then they're mid-season quarterback controversy, right? A lot of drama could happen here with Ohio State. They got a ton of talent on that team. Don't get me wrong. They're bringing back some studs, but I could see Wisconsin quietly winning games. Might not be pretty, Christian. Win some games, kind of sneak into that 3rd spot, and they're already up there. You know what I mean? Luke Fickell's done it, man. He did it at Cincinnati. He did it. He did a damn good job. People forget when he was an intern there as a head coach, took over for I think it was Urban. I think did a great job, man. The guy can coach, man. I'm big on him, but I guess we'll see what happens. I mean, that's why we sit on here and we give hot takes, right? One of us is right usually, and one of us is wrong.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is, by the way, speaking of that, I saw this come on. Devin Brown, one of the guys that's going to be battling it out for their for Ohio State's quarterback position, changed his number. You're not ready for this.
No
to
way,
number 33.
Well, he ain't playing quarterback then.
No, he is.
No fucking way.
I swear to God, dude, look it up. He did it.
No way.
He did it to pay homage to one Slingin' Sammy Baugh.
Man, he's not going to be a quarterback.
Come on, dude. What was his name? Somebody. Oh God, bro. Somebody wore 99 for Michigan. Was it Devin Gardner one year? Or
man, am I losing my mind? Didn't Jared Lorenzen, your boy, your hero, did he wear a fucking weird number too? Because he looked
22.
Yeah. He did. I'll be surprised, man. That's fucking. I mean, if he does, that's crazy. Like, good for him. You just don't ever see that though. Like, to me, it makes it sound like he didn't win the job. So
it was okay. Like, believe it or not, back in the day, which was a Wednesday, by the way, Devin Gardner wore number 98 to honor Tom Harmon. Yeah.
Season? Really?
Yeah.
I did not. Thanks for the info on. I did not know that. That's a good one, man. I did not. You would have. I had $1 million on the line. I would have shit the bed there.
Yeah, I mean, this was recently. I think this was like mid 2000s. So,
God, I don't remember that. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, most quarterbacks wear the teens or single digits. You know what I mean? Like, you never see anything over 20 ever.
No. Yeah, I mean, and that happens with old age. You start to lose touch with reality a little bit. You start misremembering things.
I'm gonna say it. The cock on this fucking guy. This micro penis on you. Wow.
Well, man, it's runs in the family. I think that's unfortunately the only thing that runs in my family.
All right, we're gonna wrap her up then, man.
I think this is a good wrap up point here. So, with that being said, guys, I mean, we'll do the outro here. I'm Christian over here with the I-80 boys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let us know what you think. With that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
No, like Christian said, like I said, guys, if you guys do tune in and watch us, man, I truly appreciate it. Like I said, we get a lot of comments and stuff, and we see some stuff. Like I said, I want people to comment. If everybody has a different take, I keep saying this every week, but give us your take. Like I said, we're normal dudes here, man. We don't claim to be, college football experts or anything like that. And this is an ESPN. So give us your guys' take. If we all had the same fucking take, it'd be a pretty boring world. So I'll leave it at that. Like I said, thank you guys. Like I said, give us a thumbs up. That would be awesome.